Keep listening for Wellness Wednesday, proudly brought to you by Vitality Unlimited for all your complete behavioral health needs. Thank you for joining us for today's Wellness Wednesday program, brought to you by Vitality Unlimited Program Services, the VIPs in our community, for community behavioral health. And today's guest, we're so pleased to welcome back Shelby Riley. She's a licensed social worker, and her specialty is in rural foster care recruitment. Welcome to our program again, Shelby. It's always a pleasure to visit with you.
Thank you so much for having me again, Lori.
Absolutely. Well, we can certainly mention a little bit about your background, your role with Nevada Division of Child and Family Services, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so I've been working for the Division of Child and Family Services for 4 years now. I started my journey as an intern, and then I worked as a CPS case manager for almost 3 years, and I have been the foster care recruiter for our rural area for the last year and a half.
Well, thanks, Shelby. Obviously, Nevada Division of Child and Family Services plays an important role in our state. If you wouldn't mind talking about the importance of this state agency.
Yeah, so the Nevada Division of Child and Family Services is an agency designed to keep kids safe in their communities. And there's a lot of programs within that division, but we're here to talk about specifically our foster care program. Over 400 children in rural Nevada are in need of protection because some form of neglect or abuse is occurring in their home. Our agency works with families to reunify children to a safe place or find other permanent options when it's applicable.
And Shelby, we know that there are various reasons why kids need to go into care. Probably the most common factor in all of this is that they are certainly not to blame for the situation that they're in.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. So according to our most recent data book, 61% of our kiddos are coming into care because some form of abuse or some form of neglect is going on. And so neglect can have a bunch of different reasons umbrellaed under that. So some of those could look like parents that are struggling with addiction. It can look like parents that are struggling with domestic violence. It can also be environmental neglects or educational neglect that are brought on by effects of poverty and under-resourced communities. What it really means is that most of our families are struggling, and they're just like you and I, but they're in one of the most major crises of their life. Their children are looking for a soft place to fall when their parents are working on rebuilding their lives and working on creating that safe place for them to come back to. What it doesn't mean is that our children are unwanted. In fact, that's some of our lowest numbers. 8% of our youth that enter foster care were determined to experience physical abuse, while only 0.5% were voluntarily relinquished from their birth families.
Wow, those are some pretty incredible figures when you consider what the stereotypes have been, Shelby. When we come back, we're going to talk with you about the need for foster caregivers in Elko County, how our area residents can help families reunite, be stronger and healthier together when Wellness Wednesday continues. Thank you for joining us for our Wellness Wednesday segment today. It's brought to you by Vitality Integrated Program Services. You can call the VIPs to find out more about the complete wraparound services of community behavioral health by calling 775-777-VIPS or 777-8477. Shelby Riley is a licensed social worker. And Shelby, we've been talking today about the importance and the need for foster caregivers locally. Would you mind expanding on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are in need of foster homes more than ever. In Elko County, we have 4 foster homes. All of those homes are full except for one spot for a child under the age of 10. If you go a little more down south to Ely, all of those homes are full. And then closer around, we have 2 homes in Winnemucca that have a spot for 1 or 2 children each. So what that really means that if a sibling group of 3 or more in Elko needed a foster home today, it is likely that they would be displaced more than 100 miles away from their community of origin. So when we're really talking about rural Nevada, we're talking about very spread out and far apart communities. And that is why it's so important that we have enough in our own community to make sure that we can keep them where they are familiar with.
Gosh, Shelby, can you tell us about why it's important to keep kids in their community if possible? Some people listening might think, well, if kids are in jeopardy, it might be good to move them out of their community, but we understand that that's not the circumstance.
Yeah, so what's really important to start with is that just the act of being removed from your family is traumatic to children. So every child that enters foster care has experienced that trauma. And that's because maybe what was going on in their own family was their normal. They may not know that what was going on was abuse or neglect in their home. And even if they did, being placed into an unfamiliar environment where they have no control over or no kind of foresight on what the future is like is extremely stressful to children. And so we really strive to keep children in familiar environments to reduce that impact of their trauma. If we can keep children around their same teachers, their same friends, that same school, those same mentors, whatever it is to keep them in some element of their world. Children that are placed far away from home are more likely to struggle with school, with behavior, and with their mental health for situations that they're really only a victim of.
And Shelby, what about the importance of keeping brothers and sisters together?
Yeah, absolutely. So siblings placed together provide a natural support system. And when you're talking about placing children in foster care, that might be the only, familiar element that they have in their environment. It might be their only safety person. And so severing that relationship is only punishing children for a situation they were only victim to. Children might begin to assume that it may be their fault that they entered foster care, or they may feel that this is a punishment for something they may have done, when this is really a system that is designed and meant to heal and help children.
Well, Shelby, when we come back, we're going to find out, we're going to tell our listeners just how they can help to make a difference and help, again, reunite these families with some January pre-service training that's available for applicants. It's going to be online, so we'll detail that when Wellness Wednesday continues. Thank you, listeners, for joining us for our Wellness Wednesday segment today. Very important discussion with our rural foster care recruiter. Shelby Riley is a licensed social worker with Nevada Division of Child and Family Services. And we've been talking about the realities and the significance of keeping families and children together, their brothers and sisters, just as much as possible, and the difference that a caring foster home can make. Shelby, if you wouldn't mind telling us about the training that's coming up this month.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to announce we are hosting our biannual training. We host it 2 times a year, so this is a great time to get started. It starts January 21st, 2023, and it is completely online with a live instructor. We meet at 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and then we meet for the next 3 consecutive Saturdays after that, totaling to 24 hours of training. During that training, we introduce you to the tools you need for parenting under a trauma-informed lens. We by no means expect you to be experts on trauma before or after this training, but we hope that this training and we want it to open to you to new ways of parenting, maybe ways that you were never parented before, maybe ways that you've never parented before, and learning just new ways that can help children that were affected by trauma.
And so you talked about some of those general topics, and this again is a pre-service training, right? It's not exactly a commitment. Isn't that correct, Shelby?
Correct. There's absolutely no commitment going through this training. It's a wonderful opportunity to get a really deep dive into understanding what the role of a foster parent looks like if you've ever been curious to decide if this is for you. Some of the topics included are roles and responsibilities of each member of the child welfare team, trauma's effect on children and their behavior, strategies to address and deal with conflict, working with birth families, transitions, and we even bring in panels of specialists from courts, social workers, former youth, and foster parents in order to answer any questions that applicants may have.
And what's the deadline to register? How can we engage people more in the process right away?
Yeah, so you can register all the way up until Tuesday, January 17th. All you need to do is create an account online by going to www.rulenvfostercare.com and click on the blue Get Started button at the bottom of the page. Once you create that account, it will alert me, and then I will make sure that we get you registered for the training and set up with everything you need.
Well, Shelby, in our last segment coming up of Wellness Wednesday, brought to you by Vitality Unlimited Program Services, we're going to talk about what makes a good foster caregiver, because there may be a few misconceptions out there, and we want to make sure that we give people the good news about just what it takes when Wellness Wednesday continues. You've been listening to Wellness Wednesday today with our guest. We sure appreciate Shelby Riley. She's a rural foster care recruiter and licensed social worker with the Nevada Division of Child and Family Services. We're talking about the dire need for foster care in our community and surrounding rural Nevada. And Shelby, once people get online with this January pre-service training, they may be really inspired by what they learn, and that's the hope anyway. But we also want to encourage them to apply. Maybe they're not a traditional family, for example. And so let's talk about what it actually takes to become, or what you might need to do to become a foster caregiver.
So we invite many different types of family makeups to become foster parents. We don't discriminate against any kind of family makeup. We're really looking for homes that are willing to be that soft place to fall for children in need. Homes that are willing to walk alongside the biological family in their journey to reunification. Every family you work with through foster care is different, and that's kind of the ugly beauty of it. You may have situations where parents are progressing great through their case, but in time you are having a great relationship and communication with them. You might have cases where we don't know where parents are, or they might be incarcerated. You might have families that give you kind of a mix of all of that in just 1 year. And so we just really invite you to learn and to really be there for children that are really in a big crisis in their life and for whatever it is that they need. You have an entire child welfare team that helps manage your case. You'll have regular child family team meetings, and you regularly have a social worker that is ultimately in charge of making sure that the well-being of the child is met. Including that, you also have a good community of other foster parents in your community that are always ready to step up and help you.
Well, I guess the only thing I might say in wrapping up our program again is just expressing appreciation for you and your team of licensed social workers. It does seem more of a calling than just a career for a lot of you professionals. Shelby Riley, we thank you so much for your time. Just one more reminder, anybody who's been listening to today's Wellness Wednesday segments, you can find out more online.
Yep, you can go to www.rulenvfostercare.com.
Shelby, thanks again for your time. We so appreciate your work. Wellness Wednesday is brought to you by Vitality Unlimited Program Services for complete community behavioral health. Call them at 775-777-VIPS. That's 777-8477. Thank you for listening to Wellness Wednesday, only on today's 95.9 and the original AM 1240 KELK. We invite your calls, comments, or suggestions to address topics you're concerned about in our community or your family. Wellness Wednesday radio program airs each Wednesday at 11 a.m. and again at 3 p.m. Brought to you by Vitality Unlimited, VIPs for all your complete behavioral health needs.